Hi, everybody. I hope that was fun for everyone. I had fun. I thought there was going to be. I thought that I was going to have more fun, I guess, with the sort of like sandboxy part of it, but I think some of that is just the nature of this being a demo level and not sort of like the full and proper game. So we'll try that out next time. We'll do Hitman chapter 2 or chapter 1 or whatever the proper start of it is. But like just the framework that they've set up so far, I like. It's interesting. And it's interesting how it sort of intersects with my experience playing stealth action games, which is limited, certainly, but includes, I guess, like most notably includes the some of the Splinter Cell games, like a couple Splinter Cell games, and all of the Shock games. Well, or the like BioShock Forward of the Shock games, which is not so much stealth action. The modern Deus Ex games are also stealth action. So all of those, like what is it, 0451 games have kind of a stealth action component, but they don't. There are definitely like big differences between that style of game and the Hitman games, which is expressed in a lot of ways really interestingly in just sort of the tuning of the levels and the system. So where you can, where an 0451 game tends to be like quite modular, it feels like these levels are a little bit more cohesive, and that could be because these tutorial levels are so small and that future levels will be bigger. But the sense that I get is that there are individuals who will go into sort of small spaces where I can attack somebody who's alone, but there are very few spaces that remain undisturbed, where I can like safely leave a body and expect that nobody will stumble onto it, or compartmentalized spaces where there's a group of people that I can either sneak past or eliminate or do some or distract, and then get to the next section where there's a different group of people that I have to get past in potentially a different way. It feels much more like people wander around and use the whole space more than in an 0451 game, and then also that there's an articulation to the suspicion and alertness and chase, I guess, and like wariness system that feels like there's much more going on there, that it's more sophisticated, that I can be compromised. For example, well, I mean, there is a thing where depending on what disguise I'm wearing, I am invisible to certain characters and not to other characters, right? Like if I'm wearing the on the yacht, if I'm wearing the like crew member uniform, then the main target dude will recognize me, will know that I'm not supposed to be there. But if I'm wearing a different uniform, if I'm wearing a police officer uniform, then he doesn't because he doesn't know all of the police officers. Like, that's very cool, and that's a level of sophistication that I'm not used to. And then this, like, I don't know for sure that my disguise can be compromised in general, that somebody can, like, find a security guard who's been stripped of his clothes and say somebody out there is dressed as a security guard, but I 100% believe it. Like, the game has given me at least a perception of that level of sophistication in that direction, that that is absolutely what I expect from it. Like, I expect it to be aware of that and to react accordingly. So that's kind of neat. On the other hand, like, a lot of the stuff that is like a combination of largely scripted behaviors and paths that then get sort of deformed by emergent behaviors based on, like, specific triggers. The kind and even the frequency of the environmental interactables, I guess, like affordances that I can create a distraction by putting on the music player. That feels very familiar to me. Like, that's the kind of thing that I'm used to in, like, a Splinter Cell game. And especially the sneaking around and overhearing conversations and getting potentially, like, some kind of clue about a way that I could go or do things differently based on, like, overhearing conversation between guards or whoever. Like, all of that feels sort of very in the wheelhouse of I want to say more mainstream stealth action games. I don't know if that's accurate or not. If they are, if the Deus Exes and the Bioshocks and the Dishonored's are more mainstream than Hitman. I would guess so. And then the other thing, I guess, is the disguise system. Like, that's the thing that is a standout mechanic that I am not familiar with in any other game, in any other system, working like this, like having that kind of mechanic. And that's really cool. I like that a lot. And there is it actually, it's funny. It reminds me of, like, stacking. The Double Fine game from, wow, a bunch of years ago now. Stacking is a game about what is it, Marioshka dolls, the Russian nesting dolls, where you can essentially take over the body of any NPC doll that is one size bigger than you currently are, and you do that by, like, jumping inside of them and controlling them, and then people will react to you based on your sort of outermost shell. And it's a Matryoshka, maybe? Yeah, that sounds something like that. Oh, thanks for subscribing, Azadio. Very, very nice. I'm glad you did that. Thank you. So in that game is, like, not a stealth combat game. It's not a combat game. It's more of a, like, little bit of a stealth puzzle game, I guess. But it's mostly like a tactical puzzle game, I guess, where there's not, like, a single solution to every puzzle, but there are a number of environmental puzzles that you solve based on simple systems, and those simple systems are essentially, like, what kind of suit do you need to be wearing in order to get some sort of desired effect in this situation, and then you got to figure out a way to get that suit. And this feels like very similar. Like, there's a strategic element to in this situation, based on like what I want to do next, is this disguise maybe a better disguise than the one that I'm currently wearing? And then once I complete that phase of the mission, like, is it going to be strategically optimal for me to change my disguise to something else? And then, you know, once I sort of figure out, yes, I wish that I had a police officer disguise, now how do I find a police officer that I can steal a disguise from? So that's all really interesting. I think that's very cool. And I look forward to sort of more of that kind of gameplay, I guess, having some depth to it in the like actual for real levels. So, all right, questions. I don't know if we have a lot of them or not, but Cage Tiger had a couple. So just the really not really Q&A question one. If I have played Night in the Woods, and the answer is I've started Night in the Woods, and I haven't gotten all that far. I started playing it on my PS4, and I think maybe I'm not crazy about playing it on a console. It is very slow. I find it very slow and kind of meandering. And I certainly don't dislike the characters. Like, I like the characters and I like the setting. And I like the tone of it fine. But I'm not really enamored of any of it. At least in the little bit that I've played. And my understanding is that this is a game, Night in the Woods, if you're not familiar with it, is I don't even know how to describe it, but my understanding of it is that it starts out sort of in a vein, and then things get kind of weird, and it gets more intense and mysterious, and I have not gotten to that. I have gotten to like young people kind of like let loose in this small town where there's not a lot to do, and I think they have expressed sort of a flouting of authority, and that's about as far as it's gone. There has been no Night in the Woods yet. So my sort of thought and expectation is that there is a lot more to this game. Playing it on the PS4, like sitting on the couch and playing it with a controller on my screen across the room, and like doing all of the reading and wandering around and talking to people, didn't feel great. And then I think I got distracted by other games. So it's something that I would definitely pick up again, probably on PC this time. I'd love to have time to get back around to it, I guess. And that I think is sometime in the future. Although there are other games that are even like, what's the one with the radio? God damn it. Marty keeps getting after me to play. God, I can't think of it. Oxenfree. So Oxenfree is another one that I haven't played, that I kind of, like, having not played them, put into a similar category of sort of like, a slow burn game that's very dialogue heavy, that is about the relationship between characters and the mysterious stuff that is going on around them. And Oxenfree is frankly sort of like more intriguing to me. So that's the one that I would probably jump into first before going back to Night in the Woods, although I'm super open to going back to Night in the Woods. Okay, so other questions. And this is a good one. This is the one, right? This is the one that we should engage with now. How do you think combat/violence interacts with this sort of simulation system in Hitman? Would a similar simulation be as interesting without it? Shit, the second part of that like really makes that question. That's good. So let's start big picture. Obviously, this is a game that is fundamentally about violence. And that sort of fundamental theme is present in the dramatic elements of the game. You are explicitly a hitman. That's the title. Your job is to kill people. Your objective in every mission is explicitly to kill someone. Even if, you're potentially rewarded for not killing any more people than that. Like, that is your raison d'etre. That's your, like, that's why you are there. That's the thing that you're doing. That's the thing that motivates you. And then, like I think all stealth action games, and especially more modern stealth action games, it plays in a space of there's the game creates versatility in interaction that is constantly surrounding, like swirling around the idea of violence. And that tends to be a core binary in these games, and certainly in this one, of can you and do you play through the game without killing anybody that you don't have to. And it's interesting to me that, that can be a very interesting question, I think, and there are games that pose it in very interesting ways. Hitman isn't really one of them. For Hitman, from what I've seen so far, the question of do you kill people unnecessarily is really a question of, like, style. Like, are you a good enough, like, high caliber, classy hitman to leave no trace, right? As opposed to an ethical question. Like, there is no moral component to should you kill people. Even in the tutorial, when you do, the reprimand that you get is not like, hey, maybe don't kill people that you don't have to. It's our clients require a certain level of discretion, so, like, watch it with the bodies. And I think that Hitman embraces that. It embraces its lack of ethical dimension. It sort of says, this is a game that is not about whether it's okay to kill people. This is a game that is about a fantastical world. It is about a fantasy in which it is okay to kill people, or, barring that, actually, it is okay to not care whether it's okay to kill people. Like, that is the fundamental fantasy of the Hitman franchise, of certainly this game, or the introduction to this game. Which is, that's interesting. Like, that is, as a social value, that is something that is worth confronting. Like, how do we feel about a game that is very upfront and explicit? And I mean, not a game, I don't mean to paint this as a game problem, but as media, as any kind of storytelling media, consumption-based narrative media that is built on this fantasy of it's okay not to care. It's okay to it's okay to, like, ignore the questions of ethics and morality. Like, that's pretty dark. Like, that is significantly darker than any kind of alternate fantasy that is about, justifiably killing. And I mean, we can go very easily into the like zombie stories or any kind of like alien stories, any kind of monster movie. I mean, not universally, I guess, but like the origins of the monster movie, and I guess I can't even say that, but there are a lot of monster movies that are built upon the premise of here is something that, because it is not human, because it is explicitly a monster, has a neutral moral value, and killing it has a neutral moral value. You don't have to is that actually, maybe that's closer to what Hitman is doing. So then there are like, justified killing fantasies. There are revenge movies, or sort of like savior complex movies where you have a character who has to kill people in order to serve some greater good, right? And that is a fantasy that is ethically complicated, but at least has some sort of ethical grounding. Typically a monster movie, like a zombie movie, the killing of zombies is rendered ethically neutral so that the story can introduce other ethical quandaries. It's rarely sort of like, is it okay in this situation to kill a zombie? It's like, it's always okay to kill a zombie. But like the threat of zombies and the fantasy of being allowed to, and not just allowed, but like morally liberated to kill humanoid things, these things that are like people but aren't people, and because they're not people, are more morally neutral, then that is placed sort of like in a not in a context, but like in a juxtaposition, I guess, with moral quandaries that happen elsewhere that are unrelated to that killing. Hitman is very much a story about like, wouldn't it be nice to just not have to worry about it? Wouldn't it be nice to like just take that question of whether it's something is right or not off the table? And that's, I don't know. Like, there's certainly an appeal to it. It's a hit game. Like, it sells and it's fun to play. There's something sort of relaxing about that liberty, about sort of like relinquishing that responsibility. It's certainly not a healthy way to live. I don't know that it's a healthy fantasy to cultivate. And there's a question of like, to what extent does a game like this cultivate that kind of fantasy, or provide sort of release for it? And that's kind of an open question, I guess, and maybe something that we can explore further as we play the game more. Okay, so then the second part of that question, right, is could you do something mechanically similar and even experientially similar? Could you make a game that is sort of spiritually like the Hitman games, that is not about violence, that is not sort of built on that particular fantasy? And I think that's a great question. I don't have a like immediate answer to it, except that actually stacking, I think, is a really, it's interesting sort of like how close that gets without necessarily explicitly trying. Like, I don't know that there's a direct connection between stacking and Hitman, but it does feel sort of mechanically and and experientially similar. Kyla says, or notes, I feel like the violence in this game is also there to add a sense of stakes and danger. And I wonder if there isn't another nonviolent way to do that. And I think that's, that hits the nail on the head. That's dead right. That stacking sort of lacks a sense of stakes that Hitman absolutely has. And whether that's good for a particular experience or not, I mean, there's some level of stakes in this game that I was finding sort of more frustrating than fun. That I wanted to explore and play, and my play inevitably resulted in sort of a lot of people with guns chasing me down and shooting at me, and that, like, having that be the inevitable result, I find kind of less interesting than if there were a more varied likely outcome to just sort of playing in the space. But it's that is guiding you as a player towards specific interactions, right? It's not really a sandbox. It's not a place where you are free to play in whatever way you want. It's a place where it gives you a lot of things to do and things to play with and ways to play, but it very much values some of that play over others. Whereas something like stacking, I think, as I remember that game, like the stakes of that game are progression based. It's like you can't get to the next area unless you solve the puzzle, which you do by sort of like figuring out how to do it. And if you haven't figured that out, if you haven't done it, then you're not able to progress until you do. So is there a non-violent way to do that? Is there something that you could do to add a sense of stakes to the game? And I mean, I think the answer to that is clearly yes. And look at something like Octodad, which is a fucking great game, like such a good game, right? And Octodad is again, not really a stealth action game, more of a stealth puzzle game, but it plays with that idea of stealth puzzle in a very different way than stacking does. Stacking is like a tactical puzzle, right? Is sort of abstract puzzle solving, and Octodad is a very loose and playful physics-based solving of puzzles. But it's the same thing, and Octodad, just because of the sort of like oh yeah, okay, well, fine. Like Cage Tiger points out that there's an antagonist character in Octodad, the chef, and there's an implied violence or potential violent outcome, where if the chef were to discover that you were an octopus, then you would be turned into sushi. And that's true, but like, to me, playing Octodad, that was never what was really at stake. What was really at stake playing Octodad was the relationship that you have with your family and how betrayed they would feel to discover that you were not a person, that you were actually an octopus. And that is, that works fabulously well in that game. And, there are other games that I gave a whole talk once. I wonder if I can find it. I bet I can. I think a lot of it is probably out of date at this point, but about stakes in games and what can we look at sort of games that exist that use something other than player death as a motivator, as like what is at stake in the conflict of the game. And there's some really good ones. One of my absolute favorite ever, is Katamari Damacy, where what is at stake in that game is your I think I phrased it as like your father's love, but it's really like praise. It's your father's praise, right? That is what you are playing for. That's what's at stake. If you do a good job on a level, then your father actually probably still withholds praise, is disdainfully or reluctantly tells you that you did an okay job. But if you fail, then you get sort of dressed down in a way that is just funny but also emotionally devastating. And I love that. Those are such good stakes for a game. So like a version of Hitman that was about sort of trying to I'm thinking now about trying to make your way through social situations without embarrassing yourself or embarrassing the people who are associated with you. A lot of Hitman is actually based around being places that you're not supposed to be, or being observed doing things that you're not supposed to do. And it seems like there are a lot of just sort of like social situations that would fit that bill. Oh gosh, Kyla, can't believe that you remember that. Yes, anyway, that was a Pechakucha that I did internally, just in the at USC for a bunch of students here. But that was fun. That was a good talk. That was a fun talk to do. Corporate espionage, to have stakes to the conflict. Yep, I like that one. That one's good. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Cool. Huck, are you running a Blades in the Dark game? Is that what you're talking about? Oh! Oh my gosh! Uniscorned! Yeah. Okay, so sorry, Kyla is bringing up a stealth game about social awkwardness that she did with Mike. Was that what was it? Universal Happy Maker? Was that one of your projects? That where you were that's right. You were pretending to be a unicorn. And if you were discovered, it was discovered that you were not actually a unicorn, it would be awkward and you would have to go home. And those were the stakes. I love that. You were a donkey with a carrot tied to your head. Yes, that's amazing. Mike and Sam. Yeah. No, that's good. Oh, that's fantastic. I remember that game. I guess I don't remember the context in which it was made. That was really cool. I was talking with some USC students about Space Wolves yesterday, and found the trailer but was unable to find like any kind of gameplay or anything like that. And I was going to ask you if it still existed. Space Wolves is a game that Kyla made while at USC. It was actually she and a team did a digital adaptation of a board game that they created. And the digital adaptation is super clever. It's a 2-player cooperative space combat game, asymmetrical space combat game. It's really kind of like a neat idea. that folks here might remember from the spectacular voice acting in that game. And I was going to ask you if like there's any way to share it with people or for it to be played, but then this morning I was trying to access games that I made like 3 years ago, and like they won't run on anything. So someday when I've got like a big chunk of time, I'm going to have a project to go back and try to resurrect some games that are just it's software's rough. The software cycles that we've got these days, if you have no maintenance budget and there's no there's no revenue from a software project, then it is really easy for it to fall out of date. Especially games, I think, that are built on engines that are, I mean, Unity, Jesus Christ, I love Unity and it is fantastic. But it, and one of the reasons it's fantastic actually is that it is being updated constantly. But stuff from just a couple of years ago is like way out of date now. Yeah, Flash is hard to run now. So yes, I'm 100% believe that. There's a, but not impossible. It is possible in like, in sort of in contexts to run Flash games. So, cool. I think there were other questions. Scrolling back up. Oh yeah, Banner Saga. So Banner Saga, oh boy. I'm basically gonna say no. Like I installed Banner Saga and I've played a tiny little bit of Banner Saga. But I don't think I made it through the tutorial, honestly. And that's not dig on the game. It's just I think I wanted to play it and I just barely got started and then didn't have time to dig into it at all, and then it sort of passed me by. But I still have it. I have the original Banner Saga, and that would be an interesting one to play. I got into it to the point where there was combat, but I still don't know that I totally understand how the combat works. As I remember, there's sort of a complicated system of stances and moves, maybe. Like there was like attacking versus defending or something like that. It was a very... It was an interesting... Okay, my impression of the Banner Saga was that it was this very interesting attempt at melding a very abstract sort of combat, like a turn-based strategic combat, with a narrative that was like much more grounded, much more like character based, although also kind of cold. I want to say like there was a formality to the narrative that in some ways matched how abstract the combat was, but made the whole game experience feel kind of distanced. And that's basically all I can say. Like I can't say whether it was effective or not because I didn't get into it enough to really have a sense of that. Okay, attacks in Banner Saga deal damage based on your health. Yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting that's an interesting way of dealing with the idea of strength and health that I think is often avoided because it is a very tricky thing to get right. And part of that is the sort of principle of double punishment, which is essentially that you want to tend to avoid as a designer situations in which the player is punished twice for the same thing. And in this case, that would be sort of like if I risk a character and I put them in a dangerous position and they get hurt, then they are like, that is a punishment to me because their health has gone down, but it's also a punishment because now they're not as useful to me in combat either. It's certainly not the only game that does that. Honestly, like Civilization comes to mind as a game that does that, and does that like quite effectively. So it's certainly not impossible to get away with that, but that's a rule of thumb, right? That's just like, that tends to be a tricky situation, and that's something that if you do it as a designer, you need to be careful about it. You need to make sure that it works right, because it is more likely than other things to be sort of a pain point for players. Yeah, okay. So Creative Beast has some advice for me about how to actually approach combat that is, I think, more specific than I can use right now. Like, I didn't get enough into the game to understand like any kind of sophistication to the combat. I just got into the tutorial, really. But yeah, that's another one that I'd like to come back to. That would be fun. Cool. Very cool. What's the Dragon Pass game? I know this. I don't know that I've played it. What is the Dragon Pass game? King of Dragon Pass on Steam. Yeah. I can't remember how this came up. I definitely remember talking about this. But I don't think I've actually played it. Here's trailer music. Listen to some trailer music. There's nothing on the screen, so it doesn't matter.
We founded our settlement at Dragon Pass. We have acquired new friends, and the time has come to make use of these relationships. I decided that we needed to make a visit to the friendly clan of Gorins and ask for cattle as payment.
It's showing a lot of like menu-based UI.
Gave him gifts for the Gorins clan and assigned him some guards. The Gorins gave us cattle without complaint. But when the caravan was returning, Yonislara engaged a Jorata from the Hawk clan.
Wow, those are some names, man.
The Hiran clan. When we found out, we headed to the Hiran clan to demand Koro marry Yonislara.
I'm lost. I don't know what's going on anymore. Interesting though. Yeah, there are some old text-based games. This maybe was one of Bill's. Maybe Bill was talking about Dragon Pass or something like that. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. I don't remember specifically what the reference is, but yeah, I got really excited about Banner Saga like when the Kickstarter was going on. I love all of the art, and the theming of it seemed really cool. I never got a chance to like really play it. That's all. Why on earth would you found your settlement somewhere called Dragon Pass? That's a really, really good point. Like, how did that place get its name? I sort of want to know, and I feel like pretty much any answer to that question is going to make me not want to put a village there. So, good. That's maybe problems in the world building. Okay, sweet. Hi, Handem. I think we are we're about to wrap up. But thanks for joining us. I mean, no, let's play more. Let's play more before we get to Dragon Question on Hitman. We're gonna play at least one more of these levels. So, and I think we'll be better prepared to really talk about it from a system standpoint. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm thinking about it now, right? Obviously, and on the one hand, like, there's two ways that I want to go with it, and they're both marvelous. And one of them is, one of them I think we can do right now, and it fucking, like, the game gives us this, right? So one of them is Hitman, with a level that takes place in, like, some kind of a little medieval town that is besieged by a dragon. And so it's just Hitman, but it's like peasants and merchants and like wizards and like the town watch and knights, right? Like, there are knights would be a class. Like, Hitman is all about the different classes of NPC characters that you can steal outfits from. So, like, definitely knights. You can walk around in a suit of armor. Agent 47, like, puts on armor, like, whoo, real fast. And you gotta, I mean, can we just fucking subvert the game? Can it be like there is somebody who is bound to be sacrificed to the dragon, and your mission is to prevent that from happening? Like, somehow save this person before they get devoured. Like, I feel like that would be a good. And then it's just a level. It's just, this is what the level is. It's a little medieval town square, and like maybe part of a castle, and a dragon, and the dragon sacrificial altar, like all that whole deal. And then you could put it inside of a large warehouse, right? Like, and build it out of plywood, because they've given us that. They've said, like, this is a way that you can engage narratively with whatever the fuck you want. Like, we did Russians and their jets, but it could just as easily take place on, like, a moon colony. And we would build it out of plywood and populate it with actors, and then just go to town. Like, I feel like maybe there's a, like, parallel series to the explicit episodic Hitman seasons. There's like like an intercalary Hitman. There's a in between seasons mini arc about just, like, the crazy shit that they get up to in that warehouse. Like, what are the rejected assassin test levels? Like, can we play with some of those? So that's one way that we go with Dragon, and I mean, obviously, yes. Why is that not there? It's episodic, so, like, maybe we can pitch it. Like, we could petition them to add something like that. The other one is going to be the systemic one, and I think I have some ideas for that, but let's play more of the game and then talk sort of like systemic dragons, and what that could look like. Agreed, Kyla. rejected assassin test levels is on its own is a great game pitch. I love that. Damn, like we're gonna have to next game jam. Now that I'm back into doing game jams, I feel like that's probably gonna be real good. All right, sweet. This was fun. Thanks for the great questions and conversation. Love doing Q&As. That's it for tonight. Thanks for being here, everybody. Really appreciate it. Thank you so much, those of you who have subscribed to the channel or donated bits through Cheers. It is really very kind of you, and kind of an amazing thing to me that you want to support this channel, because it is so rewarding in and of itself to me. It's such a great community, and it's so much fun to hang out with all of you and talk about games. So I love doing it just for that, and the fact that you enjoy it enough to want to contribute to it really means a lot to me. And I thank you very much for that. Yeah, I think that's about it. If you enjoy this show and this community, check out the other places where the community congregates: on the Discord, in the Steam group, on the forum, on the YouTube channel. There's all sorts of things. I'm very active on Twitter, or I'm reasonably active on Twitter at least, and can be found there. I'm in the next few weeks, maybe more than a couple weeks, I guess, but it's week 8 now. There's 8 more weeks until the end of the semester, and sometime in that stretch, I'm really excited to start talking about some student games that are going on this semester that are really cool, and so we'll take a look at some of that stuff and talk more about it in the coming couple months. I guess I think that's it. You are all wonderful people. Thank you again for hanging out with me. Have a great night, and yeah, I'll see you on Monday for Mostly Walking, and maybe we're gonna play Cosmonet. I would be super excited if we did that. I hope that that's a thing that we do. All right, good night.